Power to the people, we are back to do maintenance. Yeah, we're going to rock like crack when it's came in. Welcome into a very special edition of the Two Stubborn Nigerians podcast. I'm, of course, one half of your host, Paul Podcast P. I am joined, as ever, by my illustrious co-host, my co-hostess with the mostess. He goes by many names, but over here, we like to refer to him as the guy that gave you the look, the verse, and even the hook. That's why every pod sounds like Kex featuring Kex.
Yes, sir. We're back.
We are back, and today is very special, man. One of a kind podcast today. We are so excited, and we are so privileged to be joined by friend of the show, someone who we've been talking about on this podcast from all the way back in track 17, so way back to the early beginnings of this podcast. Cam Thomas, man, welcome in.
Thank you. We're in the building.
Man,
it's great to be here.
It's great. It's great to be here, man. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we get into it, as I mentioned, we are the Two Stubborn Nigerians podcast. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Podcasts. And of course, you can keep up to date on all of our content through our socials. On Twitter, you can find us at 2S Nigerians. On Instagram and TikTok, you can find us at 2_stubborn_Nigerians. And you can, of course, find us on our YouTube channel, Two Stubborn Nigerians, where we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, rang that bell for notifications, and share the video as well too. But we are here today. For listeners, regular listeners of the podcast, you'll know that we've recently dropped a bonus episode with Cam as well. We were just talking about, music and the music throughout the year and got into a really in-depth conversation. But today we're here for a very specific and particular purpose, which is more so tailored towards you, Cam. We want to learn a bit more about your career, but especially with your debut album, Redshirt, coming up.
It's a bit
soon.
scary to say that. Debut album, it's like, okay, you're setting a certain bar for yourself.
Yeah.
Because like some of my guys are always like, do you want to call it a debut album? But yeah, man. No, I can't wait to speak about it. I don't really get these opportunities very often to really just talk about this shit because there's, as an upcoming artist, I guess there's a lot of doing. Yeah. There's not a lot of really taking a step back and like speaking on it because it's a lonely endeavor a lot of the time. So I'm excited, man.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that's even, well, first of all, we're really honored and privileged that you allowed us to be the space where you do this.
It's only right, man. It's only right.
I think that is in itself one of the most important first place to start for us. Why album now? Because obviously you've released previous projects before, which we've reviewed here on the podcast, whether it's the 5 tape, whether it's Financial Times. You dropped so many singles between that. Yeah. So why now are we marketing this one specifically as an album? And has that come with any difference in mindset when you're recording it and when you're putting it together?
Why now? I think really for me it felt like the natural progression. So like you said, 5 the EP.
Yeah.
Financial Times was kind of like, I called it, in terms of like being on wax, being on vinyl, it's an EP in terms of the length of that project.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, that was a second EP, but it was kind of like an extended EP.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite an LP, but it was longer than 5 the EP. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, what's next? It's a full length project, right? I could go and call that a mixtape. I could call it a project, whatever. But in my opinion, anything that is of LP length in this day and age, you can call it a mixtape all you want. It's an album. Yeah. Like, don't shy away from calling it an album because it is. That's what it is. Do you know what I mean? Unless you're dropping it for free, putting it on SoundCloud, selling CDs, selling vinyls without it being on streaming, cool. It might be a mixtape, whatever. But yeah, man, I think for me it was natural progression, and a lot of the artists who I look up to highly and who I've grew up listening to, like they made their way into the game. They built a name for themselves off of projects, full length projects. There's not many artists in this day and age, in my opinion, who can make projects. Like, they might be sick artists in their own right. They can put out hit after hit after hit. But is anyone gonna give them the respect they deserve when they put an album out or a project? They're gonna listen from start to finish and think, wow, like, they took me on a journey. Yeah. I don't think there's many people that can do that. So I'm just trying to stamp my mark and show people what I can do effectively. Like, at this stage of where I'm at, man.
So, like, in terms of your approach to this, then, was it more so, did you go into it with a mindset of, I want to start the journey here and I want to get to here by the end? Or is it more so, you went into it saying, okay, I want a song about this, I want a song about this, I want a song about this?
Again, this was very kind of just came about very organically, to be fair. I think I always knew I was creating music that I knew like would go on a project. At the start of the process, I didn't know that was Redshirt.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I'm always in a kind of, I try to stay creative all the time because you never know what you might come up with on a given day. But that kind of leads on to why it was called Redshirt. I'm sure we'll get into like the meaning behind it and whatnot. But this period of time where I was creating the music, I was in kind of a, my personal life, well, not even personal, my professional life was very busy. I had a lot of exams going on at the time. Hence the word Redshirt, do you know what I mean? So I was creating music, didn't really know what I was going to necessarily do with it, but it just came together in a way that made sense. So I'd say 75% of the album was very kind of just not freestyle, do you know what I mean? But 75% of the album was just organic, me creating music, whatever music I felt like I needed to create. And then 25% of the album was like, oh yeah, we're missing this. We're missing this kind of song. Okay, let me tailor it a little bit, like content, concepts. Let me make sure I've covered all bases. And here we are. This is ready to go. And it's been ready to go for a minute.
Yeah.
It's been ready to go for a minute, man. Fair. So yeah.
So for context to the people at home watching this and listening, so both Raheem and I have had the privilege of already listening to the album before it comes out. And once again, thank you for that. And we've been able to run through it. On top of that, as we've mentioned before on the podcast, we were able to come to yours and the whole team at Fives show that you put on, The Real Is Back, a few months ago. Peckham Audio, amazing night, amazing event. Shout out to the whole team, especially for a first time you guys are doing something like that off your own backs. It ran so smoothly. The artists that we were introduced to were people where just like, yo, I need to hear that. Need to keep hearing this person, which was amazing. So we got the opportunity, and so we've had the privilege actually of hearing songs off the album both live
true
and CDQ. Probably use that
some of the only people who have
exactly. So it's very interesting. Let's get into just straight off the jump, because you mentioned it. I think it's important. Why Redshirt? Obviously, for people at home who don't necessarily know, in American college sports, if you're an athlete, student athlete, you can redshirt your first year, which means you sit out your first year, you don't really play, which means you lose a year of eligibility. You can come back next year and still retain your 4 years of eligibility. So why have you utilized that term for this project?
So I mean, for any listeners who have heard of me, they might have heard track 17, track 19.
17.
For anyone who has heard of me, they know I'm like massively basketball influenced. Came up off everything around that sport, played it, lived it. I've been a student athlete, so I'm always that's always going to be deep rooted in my music. So Redshirt, in the context of this project, as I was saying, like the year that I was really creating this music, I think it was I'd say maybe half of 2021, half of 2022. As I said, I had a lot of like professional exams going on for my career. So I didn't have the time to really, really push music. I was putting out singles, like Paul said, but I wasn't really dropping any EPs or anything like that. I was doing what I can to like maintain and not stagnate. So well and truly for me, it's like, okay, like that's like my Redshirt year. Like the foot wasn't all the way on the pedal, but I was focusing on things outside of music that I had to handle business. But at the same time, I was still practicing as you would if you were actually a college athlete, taking a Redshirt year. And then we're back in the game now. We're ready to go. Like we're ready to compete. And that's why, like, it took me a while to really like think of an album name. But one day I think I was listening to something and they were talking about brand names. And they were like, I think it might have been Nike, because I read what's Shoe Dog, read the book, and then I must have heard like 2-syllable brands seem to do better, from a marketing standpoint. So I was like, okay, maybe, because at first it was Redshirt year. I thought, no, wait a sec, Redshirt. It's just clean. Like, so yeah, that's like the concept behind it. And I just really liked it. Obviously, a lot of people aren't going to know what the hell it means, but hopefully by the end of the project, they might have a little bit more of a sense, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it will make a lot more sense as you listen to like the interludes that you picked.
Yeah.
I loved the Gilbert Arenas interlude, especially where it was, just because it's like, man, it really mirrors kind of the messaging you're trying to get across. Yeah. But that leads into a burning question. The question that I had off rip.
All right, cool.
The day that you said, all right, cool.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool if we could sit down. I was like, yeah, we've been wanting to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It was literally the first question I thought of, question I've always wanted to ask. How did you decide what singles, what interludes were going to make this project specifically? And the reason I asked that is you've, as you said, released a lot of singles before this album came out. Before Financial Times came out as well, you'd also released a lot of singles. What's your process to deciding this single's making the cut, this single isn't making the cut? Because especially with this album coming out, I assumed that Swingers Club was going to be on there, and it wasn't.
Interesting.
On Financial Times, I assumed Chandelier was going to be on there, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to see the mindset of how you decided, no, this one can't be there.
It's a good question, man. I think in terms of like using Swingers Club as an example, I think when it comes down to just sequencing the album, like there's no reason why Swingers Club couldn't have been on there. And I think we did have that discussion at some point. But even coming back to what I said earlier about, I don't think many people are or can put together a true body of work like they used to be able to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think there's many people that can do that. And maybe that's because they just have all this music and they think, right, this all just has to go on there. I have no problem with like slashing a track off the album if it means it's going to be a better listening experience from back to front, from front to back, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think mainly that's it. Like we just didn't really come up with a solution in terms of, okay, where does this fit? Does this sound concise enough? So I think really that's the main thing. And then I guess in terms of like choosing singles to release prior to the album, I can't even put my finger on like any kind of specific formula. It's more often than not, it's like just what makes sense. Like what do we have faith in? Like what makes me bump my head when I first hear it.
Right.
For me, off this project, is still to this day underrated.
Yeah.
Like when I first heard that mix, I was like blown away.
Yeah.
And like there's not many tracks that I can listen to like a first version and I'm like, because obviously listening to yourself, it's like you're always gonna be super critical. But I heard that and I was like, wow, like this is it.
Fam.
This is it. So I knew that had to be a single.
Fair.
So it's sometimes it's just, I guess it's just instinct.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can chalk it up to.
Fair.
Yeah.
Before I get to my question coming off that, to people at home, you know, as you're listening to this right now off the project, Heisman is already out.
Yeah.
Underrated is already out, and you recently just put out Take Time, Hold On as well with the visuals to that as well. So if you want to go away and listen to those as well to get a bit more of a feel and a sense. But you flew perfectly into a question I had, and I know from speaking to you before, you very much said like once you're done with the music, you're on to the next one. So I get that. When did you write Underrated, and was it post the drama with Heisman? Because there's a part.
Before.
Was it before?
Yeah.
Because there's a part on Underrated where you're obviously talking about and to all those people, taking shots at my voice or what, I can't obviously remember the direct words, but it's in that, and you're going in like, maybe all they want to hear is drill or that same type of sound all the time, and it would kill me to be the voice of the youth. And I was like, that, and to hear now that you said that you wrote that before, like it's crazy because it fits perfectly with everything you were saying about that.
It's funny how things work out sometimes.
Yeah,
it's funny how things work out sometimes. Like that might even be a early 2021 track.
Wow.
That's an old track.
An old track.
Wow.
But yeah, in my opinion, that's one of my strongest tracks.
100%.
I think. I mean, it's definitely the one that's done its most successful song today. Definitely. But But yeah, man, I think like even like those bars, like that's just how I speak. That's how I rap. All I know is leave it in the track every time. That's just all I do. Like I don't know, man. Like everyone that even last night at the show, at the 4 hours show, like everyone who that might have been their first introduction to me. A lot of the people were saying like everything you're saying, like there's no fillers. Like we don't really hear any fillers. Like everything you're saying, like you got so much passion behind the words you're saying, and I think that's because it is just me speaking my truth. More often than not, 100% of the time, like it's probably a few tracks where I'm just, you know, not fronting, sorry, you know, just trying to be a bit more swaggy than I might on other tracks, but I just say what's on my mind, and the whole kind of drill, you know, that's just was very prevalent at the time. It's not necessarily as prevalent now, but there's always that divide between hip hop, what I like to think as hip hop, and kind of like what's commercial right now. So yeah, man, early 2021, I think. So it's quite an old one. It's quite an old one, but before the Heisman thing.
Really?
Yeah, definitely wrote it before then.
Fair. I mean, how do you hold on to a song like Underrated
For so long.
Yeah, like you hold on to it. Do you not eventually start to fear that it may be dated by time?
Yeah, definitely. That's always a fear of mine, even with this album. Like, I don't want to talk down on my album. Shit slaps, of course.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me, it's like I've been sitting on it for a while. Some of the songs, like Underrated, are particularly old. That one necessarily hasn't got old for me, but there's some songs that I do definitely think, shit, is this actually like a hit? Is this going to resonate? But then I just kind of have to remember, wait a sec, for the guys out there who are going to listen, the guys and girls who are going to listen, this is their first time hearing that song. So they're going to feel how I felt when I was making the song, when I first heard the final version of the song. So I just have to like hold on to that as much as possible. But it's tough, man, because like from a resource standpoint, it's out of my hands, like when I can release music. If I could make a song tomorrow and put it out next Friday, I would. But where things have been at for the past 2-3 years financially, to get it to a point where the quality is of a level that I want to put out there, I have to wait. I have to wait, man. Like people are quick to put out the music, but then if you haven't got the marketing budget there, I mean, what are you doing? Like, why don't you wait until you're in a position to really push the song and get the most out of it? So it's tough to balance. Don't get me wrong. It's tough. And maybe it's just an upcoming artist thing. Like, no doubt I'm not the only person that goes through that battle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I can imagine if we had like a hit single, I'll be telling you, wait until we have the fans, because this could be our first #1 for real.
Yeah,
like, nah, nigga, put that shit out. Put that shit out.
Put it out.
Put it out.
Put it out there, man.
Do you know, that's really interesting in everything you're saying. I think one question that I'm really interested in, I think would be really good for the audience to understand, is a bit more for you, how you see your journey up to this point.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I said, we came along through a mutual friend we have, Daniel Oderindi, who shout out to Daniel, us brother,
real guy, man.
literally brother,
real guy.
literally, like, we started our podcast at the same time. I think you were really starting to bubble in Milton Keynes, and he was just like, "Yo, you managed to review this guy's album." We were like, "Yeah, why not?" And that was when 5 came out, and obviously we listened to it, we liked it, hadn't met you before, hadn't ever spoken to you before, all of that, and then we have Financial Times. It was a big rollout as well with Financial Times that you and the team did. Like, I live up in Manchester, as people know. I still walk around town in Manchester, see the 5.
Still see them.
Still see them all over the place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there's a big rollout for Financial Times. Project drops, we talked about it on the podcast. Both really loved it. Like, we obviously do our Two Stubborn Nigerian Awards at the end of each year. I think we gave you, was
nominated
for Most Improved at that time. And even between then and to now, pretty much every time you've dropped a single, one thing that we say all the time is, man, he's gotten better.
Yeah.
Man, he's gotten better. Man, he's gotten better.
Yeah.
And so now, listening to this project as well, with singles that we've obviously heard, and now being able to listen to the full thing, it's like, man, this guy keeps getting better. How are you seeing your journey as an artist, as a rapper so far?
like I can recognize that where I'm improving, and I can definitely recognize where I need to improve. I think like I don't necessarily sit down and analyze it to that level of detail, but like, you know, I'm just conscious of it. As I keep saying, it's definitely just been a natural progression. Still very early on in this whole music thing. Like, I don't know whether you guys know or whether you've heard me speak about it before, but like I first started writing and rapping when I was fairly young, you know, 15, 16 kind of thing.
On the project,
Yeah, like I had a full mixtape out back when I was like 16.
Oh man.
Yeah, so whilst that was like my initial introduction to music, you know, I only really started this seriously like I think it's coming up to like 3 years ago. So I'm young in this game. Young in this game. And that's one thing people always say to me. It's like, yo, you sound like you've been rapping for like 10 years. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I think the kind of the what's the word? I can't even think of the word, but I guess the progression of my rap has been at like an accelerated rate. It's because I'm quite fresh. So, you know, when you start learning something, you always pick up things quick at the start. I think I'm just lucky in the fact that I'm still on that train. It's still moving. The wheels are still turning. And I've always had that fear, like, yo, is this luck? Is this luck? Like, is this track a fluke? Can I do this again and again and again? Can I keep doing it? I think to this date, I'm still doing it. So I got to thank God that I can just continue to do this and hopefully continue to get better. And I think if I keep dedicating myself to the craft as much as I do now, and hopefully in time, even more than I am now, because hopefully I can, you know, make enough money to reduce my working hours. Yeah. I'm only going to continue to kind of level up. And that's the plan, man. Yeah. Like, I'm sure 5, 6, 7, 8 years deep, artists probably reach a point where they're like, what's next? How do I take myself to this next level? And I'm nowhere near there yet. So I'm just like embracing the journey for sure. And yeah, trying to make the next release better than the last, man, every time. If it ain't, then you won't hear nothing until it is. Fair. That's it. Fair. That's how I approach it. Do you know what I mean? So,
I mean, to go back to you saying like this album's been done for a while. One interview I watched years ago now, with SZA talking about her release of Control. And it stuck with me at the time, and it's something I've just been very curious about in general. Is I remember her saying the album's coming out on Friday, but there's still a bunch of things I would change about it if I could.
Yeah.
And obviously, off camera now, you were saying that you feel like since you've been finished with Redshirt, you've made better things. Yeah. Is there anything on this album that you would still want to work on, or do you think that this chapter is closed? Yeah,
this chapter's that's the way I would put it. That's a perfect way of putting it. Like that chapter in my life, or that not even that chapter in my life necessarily. It's more like that chapter of me as an artist creatively. That's closed now. Yeah, I've now moved on to whatever I'm doing right now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, people are gonna hear it eventually. That's why I'm like, cool. To really put a close on that chapter, I actually need to release it, live through it. Well, I say live through it. I've been living through it. I've kind of lived through it now.
You need to bring others into it.
I need to, like let the people embrace that and let my listeners and hopefully new listeners take that in. So yeah, I'm definitely ready to get it out. I'm definitely ready to work on new stuff and release new stuff. Yeah, that's all I can say. That's all I can say about that, man. Like it's been ready since like September last year. Fair. But I was really, really kind of persistent in trying to secure some funding for the album because you know, Financial Times completely everything up to now completely self-funded, like no help whatsoever other than friends and family. Do you know what I mean? Right. My team I'm thankful enough that they invest in this. Everything else has been, you know, out of my own pocket. So for this, me and my manager Ross, we knew that we had to kind of do the groundwork in terms of applying for grants, applying for funding, and it takes time, like, as you guys know, I'm sure. So that whole process, like back end of last year, was sorting out sorting out applications, waiting 12 weeks to get responses.
Wow.
Unsuccessful. Thankfully, Help Musicians and the Mobile Award Fund, they give you feedback. So they encourage you to reapply. So I think let's say I must have got feedback maybe in like March. Had the call. You need to do this, A, B, C, D, reapply. You might be better luck next time kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So we went back to the drawing board, made the changes that need to be made, put it back in. Okay, cool. Let's wait another 3 months. As you guys probably saw a few weeks back, it landed. It's like perfect timing. And I always had faith. Like I was saying from the jump, yo, how can you decline? How can this be unsuccessful? This shit is bulletproof. My manager's been doing this kind of thing, reading through the applications, like start to finish. Yeah, this is good to go, Cam. Like, do your thing. Unsuccessful. Do you know? Like, but I always knew in my heart, this album is. There's no one else that is make this. Do you know? But it's frustrating. There ain't no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so help musicians. God, like, thankfully, like, don't get me wrong. It's not 200K, but this is the most we've ever gonna have spent on pushing that out, pushing a project. Yeah, so fingers crossed, you know, it reaches new heights. Like that's all we can ask for, man. So it's been a long process, and that's why I'm so ready to get out.
Shout out to the corporations that get feedback for real, man.
Yeah.
Necessary.
I'm telling you.
Necessary.
Yeah, man. And I mean, you have to appreciate how many applications they get.
Yeah.
For them to give feedback to every single person.
Crazy.
I mean,
I wouldn't want that job at all. I couldn't do that job.
Nah, man. And shout out to all the charities and organizations that even give money, like, invest in these funds, because without them, I don't think we'd see a lot of the stuff that we do, to be fair.
I think the number of people we see out here would be half in terms of commercial success.
Easy.
Nice. You obviously were mentioning your team.
Yes, sir.
Talk to us about the team behind the artist and the people who helped to bring this together and bring you to this stage and what you guys as a collective are looking to do.
So you put me under pressure, man, because now it's like, oh, damn, you forgot that person. No, shout out everyone, man. That covers everyone, right?
Yeah, that covers everyone.
Like, yeah, so like when I say team, I mean well and truly, like, it's funny because I went to school with a lot of these guys, but I wasn't necessarily, you know, tight knit with them during those days. So it's just weird how it's turned out now. Obviously, we're all from Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
Majority of us born and raised Milton Keynes. So yeah,
Kings.
let's walk you through. Let's walk you through real quick. So we got a guy named Sertaj. As I said, went to school with him. Known him for God knows how many years. Obviously, he's part of Five Only Entertainment, co-founder, really, like the OG, you know, the originals, like co-founder for sure. When I was first starting in this, I used to be back and forth to Brighton a lot of the time because my good friend, again, we grew up with this guy, Keon. He used to mix and master all of my stuff. Right. He lived in Brighton. That's where he worked out of. Yeah. So he used to be with me back and forth a lot of the time. He hasn't necessarily got like a specific. It's kind of like I've got a list out here. Specific niche. Yeah. So he's like an all rounder, man. Like, yo, sir, I need you to be on camera today. I got you. Like last night, everywhere. Yeah. I was watching the footage on the way here today. Shit looks sick. So that's we got. I don't. He don't like me dropping his government name, but you'll recognize him by Falenci. Falenci. We got Falenci.
Cold verse.
Well and truly, he's the music guy. Do you know what I mean? So he's more often than not in the studio with me, hitting record, telling me, "Nah, Cam, run that back." You know, you didn't go hard enough. And obviously, he's an artist himself, so he'll lay a verse for me here and there. You know, still trying to make him release his own shit 3 years later, but there we go. That's Falenci. They're like I said, the co-founders really of this whole thing. And then over time we just branched out, but it's still all Milton Keynes. That's the beautiful thing. So Chuko, photographer, Keegan, videographer. I mean, I must owe Keegan about 20K in terms of the amount of visual content, you know. So I need to make sure I ain't forgot George. Looney animation, graphic designer, 3D animator, just anything to do with anything like that. He's your man. And he's a very, like, if he was more of a outspoken person, he'd probably be like sitting behind a mic with you guys. You know what I mean? Like he could talk about this shit all day. So let me count, bro, because I can't miss. We got George, we got Keegan, we got Chuka, we got Valenci, we got Sir. 5, and then me, that's 6, right?
Yeah.
I want to say that's like who I'm communicating with regularly. Yeah. But then there's like the expanded team, man. And it would be a disservice to try and name people because but like at the real is back. I know you guys wouldn't have seen behind the scenes, but my man Darrell came to help with his dad, bro. Like help set up, like flipping. George has got boys. George's cousin who pulls up to near enough every show, help film content. That's what
it's a team.
My memory will not serve me well, but there's really a team behind me that if I didn't have all of these guys, like I wouldn't be able to have made this much of an impact so far. It's not like I'm moot, like we're not going crazy yet, but just to get to this stage, I wouldn't be here without them. You know,
bro, I think like I wouldn't even do yourself and your team a disservice like that. Like I think obviously we're all from Milton Keynes here. Do you know what I mean? And so knowing the amount of people I know in Milton Keynes who've been like, I'm gonna start this rap shit, I'm gonna start a business shit. And not having that support around them and not even being able to get that first shit off the ground. Like even when we started, I was like, we ain't gonna make it 10 episodes. We ain't gonna make it 10 episodes, you know what I mean? And so like knowing how difficult that is, the stage that you man are at, from where we're from, that's world changing, to be honest, bro. Like,
and let me not sorry to jump in, let me not overlook Kian as well, because he mixed and mastered everything up to now, really. Redshirt year I'm working with someone new. Tyrone, shout out Tyrone. Great guy as well. But yeah, like I said, Kian, you know, without Kian at them early years, I wouldn't have been able to do this either. You know, because what I was paying for, like, to mix 5 the EP, what I was paying to mix Financial Times, and the quality that he delivered for me, like I wouldn't have found that elsewhere. For the race I was paying. So shout out Kian. Yeah, I mean, you guys are gonna hear more about him. I'm sure we'll chop it up at some point. But yeah, dope guy again. Grew up with him, like talented in his own right. So yeah, I had to put that in there because I glossed over him. And anyone else who I've missed, I'm gonna personally apologize at some point. Do you know what I mean? But just everyone, man. It's just the love's been crazy, like, and the faith. There's a lot of people who have more faith in me than I have in myself. So you know what I mean?
I mean, I think the biggest testament was literally the Real Is Back showcase. We've spoken about it a few times on this podcast, but I'll never forget when, I can't remember, I don't know what the name of the person who was on stage was, but I remember him saying, like, oh, this is 5 of us.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we're setting it up. And I remember looking to Paul saying, this is the first time. Like, I genuinely thought that this was like 3rd time that you guys would run a hip hop showcase. The way that thing was run was like by just any other corporation that you would expect. Like the quality was crazy. So for you guys to be pumping out such high quality things, I think it's a massive testament to just what your team is able to do on the day to day. So,
and I've even got to say my girl, because to be honest, at the start of this whole thing, I mean, she shot the 5 the EP cover.
Yeah.
Oh, say swear.
She's in the studio shooting that for me. We're doing shoots at courts, and because she still is into her photography and stuff. And anyone that's in a relationship knows that if you're doing something like this from a creative standpoint, it takes time away. It takes energy away. So I have a lot to thank her for, because I don't think actually, if I didn't have her, I don't think I would have found myself or found my way back to music. So yeah, man, she's not part of the team, but she is me. You know what I mean? Like we come together, we're a pair. So yeah, it would be wrong not to give her props. Give her props, man. But
shout out, man.
Yeah,
I think that takes us perfectly into this album. So let's get into it. For audiences at home. Redshirt, going into the title. One of the things that we like to do here when we talk about albums, because it goes back to a debate we had from episode 1. It's 14 songs,
Yeah.
37 minutes long. Was there any rhyme or reason to that timing of the album?
I wanted it to be longer.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, all right, let's round it up to 40 because 37
let's
don't
say
sit
40.
well with me.
Let's call it 40.
Yeah.
Let's call it 40 minutes. That's a short album, like in terms of like, you know, what we'd listen to from like the early 2000s,
Yeah.
2010s.
Yeah.
That's a short album. I wanted it to be 15 tracks. I had an extra track that I wanted to be on there, but a few guys from our team were like, I think it just drags it out too much, and I think they weren't wrong. I think maybe I was kind of attached to having 15 songs a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Not so much the length of the album, but the number of tracks.
Yeah.
I think I was attached to that a bit too much. So decided to, obviously, you know, it's not on there, but no real thought process behind the well, like I said, I wanted 15, but the length is like, I just wanted it to, if you're going to call it an album, it needs to be worthy of being called an album. But it's funny because like Jack Harlow just dropped a album and it's like, I think it's like 25 minutes.
Yeah,
25 minutes
long.
Short these days.
Yeah, because like that's what I was saying about Daytona. Like Push was very clear. Like the only specification for an album at Grammy length is 7 distinct songs. I think it's 17 minutes.
Wow.
Is the time, and then it can categorize as an album for
Yeah.
Grammys, and that's why. I mean, that's a
that's
whole
the
different
thing.
conversation over there.
So I think the main, how can I put it? Like what made it what it is now in its final form is it digestible? As a listener, are you going to get bored?
Yeah,
Are you going to want to switch off? Are you zoning out?
yeah,
3, that might be it.
yeah.
That might be it. And are we ticking those boxes? Yep, cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fair.
If you're looking at, obviously, like I said, we've listened to it. To the audiences at home, what would you say is your central theme that you wanted to get across for this album?
Like an essential theme.
If there's one. If there's not, obviously there might be multiple, but
I tried to stay on, not on brand, more like on theme, on concept. Obviously, the concept of being sport, basketball.
Yeah.
It's not like a basketball album, but
you hear the
Redshirt,
references.
there's got to be references in there. So whilst I think there's one song I made that conscious effort, and that's Away Games.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the rest of it, as I say, it was just organic.
Yeah.
That's just all in my verses anyway. So it was just, it was already built in. The concept was already built in. But that's obviously thematically is something that I wanted to be throughout. I don't like it when people be dropping concept albums, but then there's nothing in there, bro.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the main thing. Like everything else was just kind of general in terms of like, this is me, man. Like every track is just another page out the book. Another page out the book from this journey called life. as cliche as it sounds, and putting that across in a way that's, you know, sonically enjoyable. I suppose that's the best way I can put it. Yeah.
I mean, talking about the sonics of it, bro. There's some songs here, Underrated being one of them.
Yeah. Underrated.
I don't want to forget the name. Redshirt Year being another one of them.
So
I don't want to forget the name. I think it's... 1 second, let me check here.
check, bro.
Where Would I Be? I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it's Where Would I Be? Where the beat
Oh, that's crazy.
kicks you in the teeth. Like, before you even do anything, it's like, oh, hold on, we're in for something. And I always say, whenever we're talking about beats here, like, one of my favorite aspects of a beat that I don't really hear a lot of people say, but I love like those cinematic feeling beats. And you definitely have a few here. So one of my questions coming in was always like, what's your beat selection process? Like, how do you decide this is a beat we're gonna rap on? Like, I remember you dropped a single earlier, I can't remember the name now, earlier last year, I wanna say. And you even like ended it saying, yeah, this person said that this beat wasn't it. And I remember thinking, is that guy a dummy? Like, like how dare
Shout out Valenci, bro. I'm calling you out, boy.
Yo, this is the one. And that was crazy. Like, what's your beat selection process for this?
Search for beats for about 3 hours and try and find one.
Yeah.
Nah, I think like Because yeah, I mean, I get a lot of, even last night, you know, yo, your beat selection's sick, man. Like every beat, it's like, who's your producers?
Yeah.
I ain't really got any producers, bro. But I don't know what it is. But if I hear something and like everything's just flowing, like I've got ideas, the lines are just, I can't stop. Yeah, my fingers are tapping. You know, I'm always writing bars on my phone. I'll know that's a beat that, yeah, this is for me. I don't necessarily hear something and then think, oh, what could I do with this? When I hear it, I know what I can do with it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So whenever I'm lucky enough, I'm persistent enough to kind of find that gold in the amount of shit that's out there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of trash out there, obviously, when you have to search for beats yourself. When I find that gold, we got to lock in and just get it done.
Fair.
And it's funny you mentioned about where would I be. That's a funny one, because obviously no shade on the producer, but that entire song is just a song. You know, I think it might pitched up a couple, pitched up slightly, sped up slightly, add a bass line, and that's it. So he didn't produce. I don't call that producing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But especially when these producers aren't clearing any samples.
Yeah.
You deal with that.
Yeah.
Let me make money off it on BeatStars, but you deal with that. So, but I traced down whose song that was. I reached out. I said, have I got permission to use this? Do your thing. Yeah. So I got high hopes for that track because the original song went viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
That song went viral on TikTok. So, you know, I'm excited to see if I can kind of tap into that audience. Like, oh, look, I flipped this song. This is what I did with it. What do you guys think? You know, I got to stay on my toes with this TikTok shit.
Hey, man, we know it.
We know it. For years we said we're not doing TikTok, and then we gave it, man.
But when I heard that beat,
crazy,
it just engulfed me, bro. Like it's like, damn, I don't even need to rap on it. I'll just listen to the song. I keep calling it a beat. It's a song, man.
Yeah.
Like there is no verse, hook. That shit like takes you on its own journey. Like there's no parts that's the same. Do you know what I mean? It's a song.
Yeah.
And I just happen to be rapping over it because it sounds like it's a vocal sample. Do you know what I mean? That's a dope track, man. That's one of my favorites probably. Like, and the mix on it is just crack.
Yeah, bro.
The vocal mix on that is crack.
That's one of those. I definitely would up like at least a few times.
Yeah,
Man, this is ridiculous. I mean, speaking of, and I'll
go crazy.
Man, how do you decide throughout this album, right? Because there's a few songs here, again, Underrated being one of them, where you say, we're not going to have a hook here. But then there's other songs where there's very clearly a hook.
Yeah.
How are you deciding what songs get hooks, what songs don't get hooks?
I think I'm very much guided by, because I'm writing to beats. I'm not producing any of my own stuff. I'm not in the studio with producers. I can tell them, add a hook, don't add a hook. I think I'm very much guided by the beat.
Okay.
So Underrated, I don't know what you do with a hook on that beat. Well and truly.
Fair.
Financial Times, I know we're going back to old shit, but I don't know what you do on that beat hook wise. So I think I'm very much guided by the beat, really.
No, it's one of those. I think the songs that don't have hooks definitely they benefit from not having a hook. Like a song, not to spend too much time on Underrated because there's other great songs there. But a song like Underrated feels as crazy as it does because it's like, oh, this nigga's just rapping. Like he's just really going all in throughout this whole song. So I think it's a good decision not to have a beat, have a hook there. Yeah, I
definitely was falling victim like to not dropping enough songs with hooks. So that's something I definitely want on an album. There has to be some, you know, radio songs, have a hook, sound like more of a song. So I knew that I had to go crazy with that because that was something that necessarily before this, listeners hadn't really seen that side of me yet. And I got way more hooks for you. Like, I remember like back in the day when I put out like 15, 16, put out that first mixtape, I think every song had a hook. Like, I felt like I was the hook guy. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just getting back into that bag now. And I've been writing some crazy hooks lately. And that's why I want to drop new shit. Let's get this album out of the way first. But yeah, man, I love a good hook. So
that even goes back to Out of Time flows.
Yeah, for real. No, for real. Because you need no. Hold on. Give me a second. Because listen, I don't think I've ever been more astonished. I was sat down like, oh, Cav's going crazy, and then you started singing. I was like, oh shit.
I can't sing. Miles can't sing for shit. But.
I was so shocked because it was like in my head, I had an idea of who you are as an artist. That in that moment, I was like, oh, you can't put this guy in the box anymore. I can't put him in the box. Like he's capable of anything.
No, but that is very true, and I think you stumbled on like where I was gonna go with my next question anyway. Of like when I asked you about the theme of this, and you said, you know, the audience is gonna learn. You had your concept, you had the theme, but throughout it, the audience is gonna learn about you. I think that's so on brand, especially with the introduction. No introductions needed.
Man, yeah.
Being literally like, look, if you know who I am, you already know. And if you don't, I hope by the end of this shit, you get to know. And again, being able to listen to it, obviously knowing you as an artist already, like, one, I think you do that job superbly.
Thank you, man.
And then two, like when we went to the Reels Back show, like two of my boys came along with us, not knowing you, not knowing any of the artists, and like
shout out them boys.
Shout out to them, man. And they got to the end of it. I was chatting to them, and they were both like, "Yo, like, I'd listen to more." Like they captured everyone, and yourself included, like captured the attention, grabbed the audience, and again, that's from a live show where you're not even really being able to take.
Shout out to those guys that performed as well, because bro, they inspired me that night.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Crazy night. With that, how do you got 3 features on this?
Yeah.
How do you know when a track needs a feature? How did you know with the 3 tracks that have features here? With Never Easy, with Redshirt Year, with
Away Games.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess starting with Never Easy, I was listening. So this beat here is like I hate this whole type beat thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But this beat, one producer. Okay, let me tell you a bit more context actually. So, producer who produced the entirety of Financial Times. I know I keep talking about projects that aren't relevant to Redshirt, but it's all relevant in its own part. His name's Bliss from Croatia. So I'm always when I lock into a producer, I know he's tough. I'll be checking his page on a daily basis to see what he's dropping. Right. And I've even got his number, to be fair. So anytime he's dropping, I'm like, yo, this tough, bro. Yeah. But yeah, when off season, is it off season? Cole's last project, off season. When that dropped, he was going crazy with all these off season type beats. Right. So that Never Easy is an off season type beat.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That dropped, and there's that part in the track. It's not like I necessarily heard the track and I was like, yeah, let me go and do exactly the same as this. But remember how Cole's verse transitioned into Baby's verse? Yeah. This gives me that kind of feel to it. Yeah, you don't even know there's a transition coming. Yeah. But the way that beat just like, I don't know, just like the way it fades out. Yeah. And then it just drops back in. Something new comes in. I think that's probably one of my favorite tracks I've done with someone else, for sure. So that's Never Easy. Redshirt Year. I didn't like this beat. Yeah. At first, when I said about beats, like, you know, I'm tapped in straight away. I didn't find this beat. Valenci found the beat. Fair. There's a lot of footage of us in the studio. I'm trying to write this verse, and I just can't really get anything down because it just didn't touch me straight away. He's writing away. He had a verse. I was like, bro, like, because he had the concept. We need a song on the album called Redshirt Year. Like, let's talk about this properly, leading on from the Gilbert skit. Yeah. So I'm like, cool, all right, let me go away. I'm not great at writing in the studio. I write in my car. I like writing in my car. I'm always tapped in my car. So I need to go away. I sat on it for a while, put that together. I think I came back to it a couple of times to really get that verse wrapped up. But we got there in the end. So that's that one. Finally, Away Games. Again, that was kind of, like I said, one of the tracks that I guess was engineered specifically for this album. We had Where Would I Be that, you know, is kind of geared towards probably more so a female listener. Obviously, you know, we can appreciate that shit too. But, you know, shout out to all the females who listen to my stuff. I definitely wanted to appeal to that audience as well. But I didn't feel like one was enough. I needed 2. Yeah. So Away Games on there, and I listened to a lot of R&B, bro. Like when I was younger, I probably listened to more R&B than I did hip hop. A lot of the time.
Right people, man.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to do something with an R&B artist. So shout out Toby, shout out to King Toby, another one of the guys we grew up with, went to school with. Like, so it was only right to, you know, bring him into this whole home feel, like homegrown kind of shit, man. And we were yet to work on anything together, so we got it done. He's staying out in Nigeria right now. He came back for like a week or something.
Wow.
He locked in, got his verse done. That was that.
Mad.
That was that, man.
Valencia,
What do you guys think about? Was that enough features? We wanted more or what?
No, for me anyway.
How do you feel?
Features are always just like a happy surprise to me. It's not something that when I turn on an album, it's never something where I'm like, there better be a feature. There better be this many features or whatever. It's like, if there's a feature, there's a feature. If there's not a feature, there's not a feature.
It felt right.
Exactly. As long as the features don't feel like they've been forced onto a song where they shouldn't be, then I'm never upset with any features. And I think everyone who hopped on this album as a feature came to play. Like even Valencia, massive standout, both here at the live show. I was like, oh, I didn't know Valencia. I didn't know he rap.
Yeah, bro.
And then finally, it was so hyped that everyone was like, yeah, will that.
This is what I'm saying.
And it's the same here. It's like, oh, shit.
He needs to hear this, bro. Yeah, hear this. Yeah, let him
Nah,
hear this shit.
Valencia, you killed that shit. And I think with features, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think, especially with the theme of the album and with the story you're trying to tell on the album, I think it's the right balance.
Yeah.
Because it's your story. You know what I'm saying?
And they still tapped into that.
That's what I'm saying. And
Toby
that,
killed it. Yeah,
Toby killed it.
Yeah.
And obviously, knowing now that he's from MK as well, as someone else you grew up with, it fits even more
That's
about
what
the
I mean, bro.
need to know about us and the team. And I think I think that was beautifully done. We're approaching the hour mark in this conversation here, which has been really great. So I think the next best question for me to ask you is, when people go away and they listen to this album, which they will do, you know, Redshirt coming soon, make sure you go in and tap into that, listen to this album. What do you want people to know about Cam Thomas? What message do you want people to take away? What can people expect to get from this album?
Something just came to my head. I think, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because I think, not to say like racially profile or something, but there's a lot of light-skinned rappers out there, bro. And like, I think a lot of people automatically look at a light-skinned rapper and think, oh, he's trying to be Drake. Yeah. You know, I'm inspired by Drake heavily. A lot of the production nowadays is inspired by him because he's done everything, bro.
Absolutely.
So I'd encourage people to take a second, take a minute even, listen to the music. Like I said, don't judge a book by its cover necessarily until you understand what they're saying, till you've understood like why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
How passionate they are about what they're doing, the work that they're putting in, the story behind it. Like, and the only way you can find out these things is if you listen, bro. If you don't listen and you're judging it off a 30-second TikTok clip or a 30-second clip on Twitter, I'm spitting everywhere, damn. Then you don't know any of these things. And if you're really gonna appreciate an artist for what they want to be appreciated by, you need to like take a step and just actually take it in, which is obviously not what a lot of people do nowadays, but that's what I'd encourage them to do if they want to, you know, if they want to know more about me and really appreciate the album for what it's worth. Anything
from you?
Nah, man, I think overall, I mean, our thoughts on the album, me personally, big fan of this. I can't wait until it comes out.
Yeah, man.
And I can listen to it on Apple Music or Spotify. Man, I'm really excited for this album. Paul, your thoughts?
Nah, double down, man. I'd like really excited. This is really impressive, bro. Like on a serious level. And he knows me well enough to know I wouldn't just say that because I would very much come in here and shit on like the project. For fun.
He's waiting until the day he can hate someone.
I'm waiting to that thing. Nah, but for real, like serious project. Again, like the improvement is crazy. The fact that you are already on the next phase, ready to go with some other shit from a fan's perspective is exciting. I'm excited for people who haven't heard you before to be able to take this in, digest it, go on the journey with you through this project, because I think it's a palpable one. I think it's one that people will enjoy. Like you said, if they've really opened their ears to sit down and digest it, I think it's perfect length for me. I think it's a perfect length. I think it's really digestible. I think it's just good music, like
man.
throughout. So huge shout outs to yourself. Huge shout outs to the team behind it.
That's what, like, even when you say about the whole digestible thing as well, like, and if you're not one of them people who likes to digest music and it's very surface level, that's all right. At the minute, you might not be the fan for me. You might not be my ideal listener demographic right now. Yeah. One day I might have those kind of hits, you know, them surface level. You ain't got to listen. You ain't got to really just bump your head and vibe, you know what I mean? But I haven't got many of those yet. So maybe a few years down the line, I'm going to get you guys. Yeah. But right now, you know, like lately when I've been at these shows and I've been, you know, watching who's really taking in what I'm saying at these live shows, that's another thing I would say. Like, if you really want to see who is a rapper, pull up to a live show.
Facts.
We can talk then. You know, we can talk then. But yeah, I'll be really kind of trying to figure out, okay, I see you over there in the crowd. Yeah, you're fucking with me. How do I find 1,000 of you? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Or that person they were bopping to this song. Oh, but now just a couple tracks later, I can see they're a bit disengaged now. You know, I'm just trying to take account of everything and trying to play the best cards that I can at the best times that I can, without letting it dictate what I do creatively too much. But yeah, that's the biggest challenge for me, is finding the audience. So yeah, hopefully your listeners, hopefully everyone else out there who hears this and hears any part of the album, just takes it in, man, for what it's worth, because nobody wants to listen to albums anymore. But I'm here for albums, man. I feel like I'm an album artist. Well and truly.
That's beautiful to hear, to be honest.
So I can't wait till I can lock in with a producer for like a year. We don't leave the studio. Do you know what I mean? Because you know we're going to create some...
those are the best ones. Those are the best ones. We always say, you get one producer, one artist, and let them just work together, create gold.
Yeah.
But now, I'll say the biggest compliment I can give to this album, for those who haven't listened to it, for those who are still listening, still trying to find a reason to go and listen to this, is... I listened to it on the car ride from Milton Keynes to here. It finished at about halfway through my journey, if not less than that. I said, nah, I want to listen to the whole thing again. And it's an album that you keep on wanting to go back to the very beginning and listen through again. And I'm not just saying that because Cam is sat here. I'm saying that because it's a really good album. So go and listen to that for real.
For real. Just, you know, as we wrap once again, man, thank you so much for coming to sit down with us. We really appreciate the time. And again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear the music early. We appreciate that. To those at home, be on the lookout. Redshirt coming soon. You can check out Cam on all of his socials. On Instagram, it's Cam Thomas, but the S is a 5. You know, obviously we shout out 5 Only Entertainment over here. You know, you got 2 fans in us anytime. So it's been amazing to chop it up with you, man. To those of you at home, like I said, Redshirt coming soon. We appreciate you for checking us out. We have been the Two Stubborn Nigerians podcast, and of course you can find us on all of our socials. At Twitter, it's at 2S Nigerians. On Instagram and TikTok, it's at 2_stubborn_Nigerians. And if you're watching us here on our YouTube channel, we really appreciate you, but we really appreciate you even more if you could subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, like a video, share a video, leave a comment, and of course, whilst you're here, whilst you're waiting for the album, you can go away, check out all of Cam's music. Highly recommend Underrated. We've mentioned it so many times over here. You can go back and listen to the Project Financial Times so you can track the journey to where he is now. But from us, we have been the Two Stubborn Nigerians podcast. He has been Cam Thomas. Raheem closes out.
Nigeria never carries last.
Peace and love.